Hey everybody, welcome to Pete Carroll Was Right, the confusingly named Alabama football live video show. As always, it's Carter Spires, Ben Litvin, and Mitchell Wesson here to talk Alabama football with you. We're going to hopefully give you some nice thoughts tonight on a rather ominous evening for the Alabama athletic department. I don't think we're going to talk about that in too much detail since it's one, this ain't no basketball show, and two, and two, it's anything that happens is largely speculation at this point.
Right.
But we have one of the most aesthetically pleasing Alabama football performances in a long time to talk about, as well as a looking forward to Ole Miss, who hopefully this game will be far less eventful than it's been the last 3 seasons. But yeah, Vanderbilt. That was an ass whooping. It's not a whole lot more complicated than that. I think we all thought, none of us expected that, obviously. Yeah. I think the thing was, I don't feel like I so much was like overestimating Vanderbilt so much as I just didn't think Alabama would play that clean of a game because it was such. They just didn't.
Right.
Well, like here's an illustrative stat. I think I saw that they ran the ball 52 times, and how many, excluding sacks, how many of those were met at or they got tackled at or behind the line of scrimmage? 0. Ooh. 0. Not a single time. A stuff rate, if you will, of 0%.
Yeah. So I wanted to sort of we talked in the podcast. Now, there were some national media types who hyped up the Vanderbilt defense a little bit. The guy with the initials DW being the first one that comes to mind. Not to
well, when he is wrong, he is wrong.
Yeah. He was pretty wrong. But anyways, but just to sort of hone in very specifically on the point that he was making, which is in his own words that the Vanderbilt defense is legit. And it wasn't just him that was saying that, right? I mean, I think we had a lot of people that have talked, pretty highly of the Vanderbilt defense, thinking that they can be a very good unit. And I think one of the things that we talked about on the show last week was that despite the fact that I don't think any of us expected 59 points, we look back at that Kansas State game and we said, that run defense is not so great. Now, right. Most of Kansas State's success on the ground came from quarterback design runs, but the point was that their defensive line was not exactly controlling the action at the point of attack.
No.
And if they weren't going to control the action against Kansas State, then I'm not really sure that they were going to control the action against Alabama. And I think people looked at that game and they got fooled by the fact that Kansas State only got 7 points without sort of realizing that partly that was because Kansas State couldn't throw the ball and partly that was because Vanderbilt kind of got a little lucky in terms of Kansas State shooting themselves in the foot. Right. And they played basically, I don't know if they even played that much worse against Alabama than they did against Kansas State, yet Alabama's pretty good and the result is going to be different.
Right. And I think I do want to point out that I think Alabama got like a little lucky on like the
first drive.
On the first drive of the game, Vanderbilt gets the 44 on a
that unlucky in that regard because that's crap.
Well, that was I'm not talking about that. That's just like because what's Anthony supposed to do?
Right. It's like, one thing if he's stationary. Like if the quarterback is stationary and not moving, then don't dive at his legs. But if he's mobile, he should not. I guess here's the point: the quarterback should not be protected in the same way if he is mobile in any regard, even if that mobility is taking him backwards. He should really lose a lot of his protection because he's attempting to be evasive. Yeah.
Well, well, think about the play that DeAndre Francois got injured.
I was right.
Ronnie Harrison is chasing him from behind, and he dives for him. And he's trying to tackle him around the waist or something like that. And as Francois gets farther away, he ends up getting tripped up and hurts his knee. But like, it's not a dirty play,
right?
And it certainly wasn't for Anthony there. So, but anyway, that gets Vanderbilt to the 44-yard line, and they really got there was a bit of a mix-up, and they got in the secondary, and they got a tight end wide open, basically. And the ball just ended up bouncing off his hands and directly into Ronnie Harrison's. Now, after that, Vanderbilt did a whole fat load of nothing. But I don't know. I guess that leads into, there are some points we want to hit, I guess, which we made the point last week that this is not an offense that was going to challenge the Alabama defense in any way. But still, they looked really and I think there are a lot of positives to take in terms of the way they performed. It was super nice, right from the get-go, to get Anthony Jennings and Rashaan Evans back. Not just in terms of highlight plays where Rashaan is
just throwing guys,
choke slamming offensive line.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But I thought Anthony looked good. I thought he looked fast and disruptive. I also thought, for whatever reason, maybe just because they, having Rashaan back, they felt more comfortable moving guys around from the inside.
Mac Wilson.
Yeah, so they played Mac Wilson at outside linebacker in kind of rush packages, and let him rush the passer, and he did really well at it.
Yeah.
And on the whole, I think the stats said that Alabama didn't have any sacks, and that I think they were only credited with 3 quarterback hurries, but the pass rush felt good.
Yep.
It was probably the first time all year it really did.
Yeah.
Well, and that gets back to what we were talking about last week, where they're not really trying to sack the quarterback.
Exactly.
They're not bringing all these exotic blitzes. So.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think so. I think Carter brings up a good point. First of all, about Mac Wilson, who seems like he's got some legitimate skills and some a really good get off and some actual pass rush moves at sort of rush end there. And this is something that Alabama, the first time I can remember them doing it is in 2015, putting Reggie Ragland at defensive end on 3rd and longs and trying to ask him to get after the quarterback. And
they did it a little bit with Dante Hyde.
Oh, Dante, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just, as you're about to say that, I'm thinking national championships, stripping the ball and everything. That's right. So Dante got some time at defensive end. So it's something that they've done in the past. And I think that's something great to see going forward. I think sort of looking at it more broadly, one of the things we talked about on the podcast immediately after Florida State was that we're not super concerned about Alabama's pass rush on passing downs, because whether that's moving guys like Mac Wilson or Rashaan Evans or whoever outside and having them go one-on-one with tackles, or whether that's finding some success in the manufactured pressure game, I don't think we were too concerned, even with losing Lewis and Miller. I don't think we were all that concerned about their ability to rush the passer on 3rd and longs. The question, though, still remains, how proficient can they be at rushing the passer on standard downs? Those downs where you don't really know whether it's going to be a run or a pass. Last year you didn't know whether it would be a run on a pass on 1st and 10, but you had Tim Williams and Ryan Anderson, and suddenly it's a pass, and suddenly they get pressure, and suddenly the defense is behind the chains. I still don't necessarily know if they can do that this year, even with some good things that we've seen from different players. But certainly, if there was any concerns about their ability to get after the quarterback on passing downs, I think those are pretty much, maybe not completely squashed, but I think we feel pretty good about what they can do in those situations.
Right. And, I think it's worth making the point that, as good as this front is against the run and as good as the secondary is, they're probably going to get people in passing downs.
Right.
A pretty solid amount of the time. So, it's definitely going to put more stress on the defense in some ways to not have that pass rush ability on standard downs, but being able to do it proficiently on passing downs is certainly not nothing.
Yeah. Mitch, who stood out to you on the defensive line? Because I feel like we want to get into that, because that's a position group that we probably spend maybe the most time discussing outside of quarterback on this entire team is the defensive line. So I want to talk a little bit more specifically about their performance.
Duran, as usual, I think, just dominated whoever was against him.
I agree. I thought Duran had probably his best game.
Yeah, that's who stood out to me.
Raekwon had some pressures too, I think.
Yeah.
He's pretty good. I think I saw maybe that he leads the team in pressures, or he's second to Minka in quarterback pressures. So that's pretty good.
Deshaun Hand had a good game.
Yeah.
He was on like PFF's, SEC Defensive Team of the Week or something like that. And I think, we at this point we just have to kind of give up on, we had all sort of hoped that he could be obviously he wasn't going to become Jonathan Allen, but be that type of player. And it's clear at this point that he's just not that type of player. But he's still, he's solid. He's starting for a reason,
Right.
and getting the snaps he is for a reason. So if I think we have to kind of recalibrate our expectations for him, and from that view, I think he did have a pretty good game.
Yeah, he was solid.
The Tony Brown of the defensive line.
For sure.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
And just so much potential, but
yeah. But I think Carter's right though, is that if you sort of get rid of this idea of him being like, top 5 player in the country coming out of high school, and you think, okay, well, he's just another defensive end. Well, then suddenly suddenly his play can be seen in a little bit of a rosier light. So I thought, but I mean, overall, the defensive line obviously played super well. I think they really were led by Duran, and I think that this is the kind of performance that you really want to see week in and week out from him. And if he plays like that in terms of not just controlling his man at the point of attack, but really getting penetrations and stuff, and getting into the backfield and rerouting run plays, or getting after the quarterback, or everything that comes with sort of shooting gaps and beating your man and getting in the backfield, then I think everything else starts to follow on the defensive line if he can have that sort of impact. So I thought that was really nice to see. And I think that's sort of maybe their best player on defense on Saturday.
Yeah. While we're on the subject of recalibrating expectations, I just want to throw this out as an aside. I am really tired of hearing Alabama fans ask about Ben Davis this season. Like, he redshirted last year. Like, he's clearly not contributing. Like, can we just chill out about him? Right. Because how many times have we seen, dozens of 5-star guys program in the last decade? A significant portion of them just don't make contributions early on in their careers. Right. Sometimes it just takes longer. And so, I think it's pretty obvious that that's what the situation is with Ben. He's just not ready to contribute yet, and that's okay.
Right.
You can wait for him. There is plenty of talent at linebacker. So I just, let's just say, okay, Ben Davis needs more time, and
kind of leave it at that.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good way to look at it. Speaking of young linebackers, though, Dylan Moses got a fair amount of snaps.
Mm-hmm.
Was playing they were almost playing some 4-3 looks, and he was just playing outside linebacker and was almost 4-3 looks. So that was kind of cool. So many guys got snapped. Josh McMillan got some snaps at.
I was checking the roster page.
Number 40. See who's number 40 is. Yeah.
Number 40.
Yeah. So it's they're getting a lot of guys some reps, which is good. Yeah, overall it was good. Sean Dan Hamilton played pretty well. I thought he was kind of all over the place. Had a really nice pass breakup. I think it was in the first quarter. So it's good to see him looking good. But just overall, obviously, the front was really good. I thought one of the things that was interesting to me is that they came out and they played a lot of. They brought a safety down in the box a lot. So if you want to look at how this team could be different from previous years, right there is one area. Right, in previous years there wasn't a whole lot of emphasis on loading the box, because it was just, okay, we trust our defensive line to just dominate, and we don't need to bring up extra guys because they're going to be fine, playing sort of an even numbers game there. But it's going to be different this year. And, you're going to bring guys into the box and you're going to run blitz a lot. And I think we saw that a lot, and it was sort of very effective. So
Yeah.
I think that's something to expect more going forward against run-first teams.
Right. And also, it goes both ways, too. I think part of the reason they're more comfortable bringing a safety down is because they have a lot of confidence in the secondary this year.
Exactly. Now, the secondary, what do you guys think of the secondary?
Not.
Yeah, there's just not a whole
big
lot to
challenge.
say, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, there wasn't a ton. I mean, you mentioned kind of busting on that corner out to the tight end.
Yeah.
Seemed like they tackled well when they needed to.
Yeah, I think they tackled. Let's see. Minka had a nice pass breakup early on a third down. I don't remember. Ronnie had the pick, obviously. They really like, I mean, I don't know. Vandy just couldn't do anything through the air. That was clear so early on that there was just no way that they were going to be able to be effective there. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about the secondary.
Yeah, no, it's not the kind of game where they really are going to have a whole lot of impact one way or another.
I thought they used Minka really creatively, and this is not going to talk about defending the pass, because what I mean is they use him creatively in the box and blitzing, pass blitzing, run blitzing, stuff like that, using him to really get after Shermer. So that's really nice to see. It's going to be. This is going to be a lot better week to sort of see what some of these guys can do. Ole Miss is going to force guys like Levi Wallace to really be able to hold up in man coverage down the field. And I'm very, especially in a game that Alabama can't lose. Alabama's not going to lose to Ole Miss. But so it's going to be really interesting to be able to, without much concern, focus on stuff like that and say, okay, these guys are finally going to face sort of a good group of receivers, especially if A.J. Brown plays. Well, how are you going to hold up against those guys? How are you going to hold up? How are you going to play the ball in the air? We know how much Ole Miss likes to sort of test the edges and throw sort of fades and fade stops and stuff like that. So how are you going to play the edges? How are you going to play the ball in the air? How physical are you going to be at the line of scrimmage in terms of, jamming these guys and whatnot. So I'm sort of excited for that, because I feel like we haven't really gotten a good feel for how good the secondary can be against the pass.
Right.
Especially how good the corners can be against the pass.
Well, they just haven't faced a really Florida State threw the ball plenty, and Francois is a good quarterback, but they haven't faced a team like Ole Miss, like a real, true, spread passing attack.
Yep.
It's just going to go at you on every. I mean, Ole Miss has. I counted, and I think they've run the ball like 30 or 40 times in 3 games this year. They're
not going to run the ball against Alabama.
200 total yards, and they've thrown for 1,200. So they're not. They're not even going to make any attempts at pretending to be balanced.
Well, and I think I read that half of their runs were scrambles on pass plays or something too. So
that's crazy. Yeah. That's crazy. And they I remember even before last year's game, Hugh Freeze had some line leading up to the game about how we kind of know we can't run the ball, so we're not going to run the ball against Alabama.
Which I think we said 2 years ago was it's just a wasted play.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a wasted play. And the thing about Ole Miss is that they can be, in terms of the way they use the entire width of the field and the sort of the creativity of their pass offense, if they've got a quarterback that can really get the ball out on time and make accurate throws, they almost don't even need the threat of the run in order to open up passing lanes. I think we saw that. I think we've seen that really the last 3 years. And I'm not saying we're going to see it this year, but I think we really saw that the last 3 years, that they were able to have success throwing the ball in situations where Alabama knew that they didn't even have to worry about the run.
Yeah.
Because
you see this with plenty of with NFL teams these days. You pass to win in the NFL, especially when you've got an Aaron Rodgers or a Tom Brady or something like. The other team knows they're going to throw on, a massive percentage of their plays. It's just if you've got the right schemes and you've got the right players and you've got the right quarterback, it doesn't really matter. Like
Exactly.
there's only so much you can do to stop certain plays if they're executed properly.
Yeah. And say what you want, about Hugh Freeze, but his offense is good. Yeah. Obviously, he's not there anymore, but it's still his system. It's still a lot of his players, and that is a really, really, really challenging system for an opposing defense to go up against in terms of the way they create space for their playmakers. Anyways, we're probably getting ahead of ourselves because we still got to finish Vandy.
One other defensive point I wanted to talk about before we moved on is I think Carter retweeted somebody that had charted how many different formations.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I actually had that full article just got published.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm gonna pop it to y'all in the chat right now. But if you look, it's Ollie Connolly writing for no relation to our dear Bill. He posted a chart where he had charted the game, putting like what personnel Alabama had in on defense and what
formation
front they were in and how many they had in the box. And this is just apart from the first half, and they're playing 3-3-5, they're playing 4-3 under, they're playing 4-3 over, they're playing 3-4, they're playing bare fronts. Like it's actually insane looking at this to see how this is sort of an overused phrase on both offense and defense, but to see how multiple they were up front.
Yep.
Like they basically threw every look at Vanderbilt that you could possibly throw in defense.
And that's less a point about Vanderbilt and more a point going forward about, how do you watch film of this team?
Right.
Going forward?
Right. And I think that these are sort of things we've alluded to in previous podcasts, which is that I would never say that Alabama got vanilla on defense, but the last couple years, I think schematically, they really tried to put the defense in a situation where they would just allow their extreme talent to just win out on a play-to-play basis.
Yeah.
Because they did, and I think like even just the fact that they were just staying in a lot of like 2 deep safety looks, right? Playing a lot of cover 2, cover 7. Now where the talent level, especially up front, isn't quite the same, they need to get more, multiple, and they need to get more creative. And this is really, this is more right up Saban and Jeremy Pruitt's alley here. They don't want to sit back and just say, okay, talent, go win games. They want to be creative schematically. They want to. Sorry, say again.
They're as Heath Ledger's Joker would say, they are schemers.
Yes, they are, and I think that there's probably some comfort, right, in trying to sort of get back to that, philosophical approach to defense, where you don't just sitting back and relying on your talent, but you're sort of calling plays and scheming in a way to dictate what happens, right? Alabama, I felt like against Vanderbilt, Alabama was dictating what was happening on a play-to-play defense, which is so tough considering the inherent advantages that the offense has. But I thought that they really did, that they really completely controlled the football game, and that really impressed me.
Well, and to your point about what they were doing, the last 2 seasons, when you've got players that are just so dominant, especially the way they had them on the front, like there's a lot to be said for just, you don't even need to make things complicated. Like
exactly.
There's no point when you can line up and have your guy beat their guy on every single play. You just, you don't. It's like what to an extent they still do this, but like think about when the Seahawks defense in the NFL was at kind of the height of their powers.
Right.
They didn't in the secondary. They played cover
3. Yeah,
they played cover 3 like the whole time.
Yeah,
because they had Richard Sherman at one corner spot, and I don't remember who was there. They went through a couple guys at the other spot.
They had Earl Thomas.
They had the best pure center fielder in football in Earl Thomas for a while, and so it's like you don't need to do a lot exotic when you just have your guys beat their guys all the time.
Because the more exotic you get, the more inherently risky things become, especially in terms of giving up big plays. And there's just so there you're obviously going to take on some risk when you do stuff like that, which is why when you have such a talent gap. There's, you don't want to do it, but I think that Alabama, these kids are so well coached, right? That I think that they can get creative and get exotic while really minimizing the risk at least as much as possible.
Right.
But I think that's a great point, Mitch, and I think that's something that's really, really excited to see going forward in terms of how multiple, I guess, they can be defensively.
So offense. I think first, I think to start with Jalen. His line didn't look great, and I will say this probably wasn't his best performance. Like I noticed, I didn't get to rewatch the whole game, but I rewatched big chunks of it, and he definitely had some sort of poor throws, a couple on screens, on slants, on stuff like that, where the balls just weren't in the right place. He also had a touchdown drop by Calvin
on a bad play, though, because Calvin's open immediately. Jalen's holding onto the ball, and then when Jalen finally lets it go, it's like a wobbly duck, kind of a little bit behind Calvin, right? So even on that, now Calvin catches that. Calvin's got to catch that ball.
I mean, like it hit him directly in the head.
Right. Calvin's got to catch that ball. But I'm just saying though that like even there, the quarterback play on that play was not great. Right. The ball was late. The ball wasn't perfectly placed, and the ball also was ugly coming out of his hand. So like I agree that like Calvin catches that and his line looks a lot different, but I don't think that was some sort of good play by Jalen, I guess is what I'm saying.
And I'm just talking in terms of the line, the stat
right,
line.
The stat line.
Bo dropped a swing pass.
Yeah, which was well thrown too. That was timed well, right out in front of him in stride. Yeah.
And that one's probably that one I think is a touchdown.
So do I.
My point is that they just asked him to do so little this game. Like I'm not even sure they ran any option play. Like there might have been a couple.
Yeah.
But the goal line, there were a few.
There might have been he had a couple of design keeps, but there wasn't a lot of options. Yeah.
Which is interesting, and this can lead us into a point where I think I want to talk a bit about Dable when we're done with the offense in terms of personnel. But they just asked him to do so little that this game doesn't really tell you much about. Like I feel like when we write the story of Jalen's season in 2017, this is not a game that's really going to tell you much one way or the other. It's just it wasn't a game where he really mattered, honestly.
Yeah. You know what game this reminded me of a lot, especially from an offensive standpoint? 2012 Missouri, which was a game where they were just incredible in the first half. They had the two backs going. They could just do whatever they wanted. Now in that game, the weather wasn't great, so they especially didn't want to take chances there. AJ just didn't do anything in that game. He barely threw the ball. And I think that the offensive game plan was very similar yesterday or Saturday when it was there, in terms of the fact that like when you can just do whatever you want on the ground, what's the point? What's the point to really sort of asking Jalen to do things? I'm trying to think if he had any throws that stood out. He had I don't know, he came out and threw the ball second play of the game. I remember he had a little throw to Calvin on the right side. I know he hit Judy on a crosser, maybe on the first drive of the second quarter.
They worked. He had a nice little toss to Irv Smith on like a.
Oh yeah, they had a little couple of tacks to the tight ends. We thought maybe that they would try to take advantage of the Vanderbilt linebackers being aggressive, and we saw that.
Yeah, they worked the middle of the field a little bit. They had some routes to the tight ends. They had some slants and stuff. And it was good. It wasn't a whole lot, and they didn't really get any big plays off it or anything like that. But it was nice to see some of that being worked in.
What was Jalen's line? What was his? Do you have his final line?
I think it was 9 of 17 for less than 100 yards.
9 of 17 for less than 100. That sounds right. Yeah. He had that throw to Robert Foster. I think we got a question about that throw to Robert Foster, didn't we?
Yeah. Our friend McGee, the referee, sent us a couple questions before the game.
Yeah, what was that one?
Yeah, that one. He said so. It was that throw. He had Robert Foster in the end zone, and it was just beyond his hands. The question is, did Robert Foster not turn on the jets soon enough on the deep ball in the end zone?
Is he not right? I have to watch that. I have to watch that again. Is he not running full stride the whole way?
It looked like he definitely, when the ball was in the air,
He turned it on more. Yeah.
But it's also, I don't know, I didn't watch back closely enough. It looked like he may have been held just like a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was a good. It was one of those ones, and they've had. I like that they're not hesitating to make those throws. It's been frustrating that they haven't connected on more of them. But at the same time, they've had so many like that where it was like just
right
close. And as long as you commit to staying aggressive and you commit to making those throws on a consistent basis, at some point you're going to connect on those.
And that's what I was going to say too. Like, you know, he's giving his receiver. He's throwing good balls. He's doing these sort of deep shots down the sideline. I mean, he's throwing good balls this year, better balls than he threw last year, giving his receivers to make plays, not really putting the ball in harm's way. Like we saw I think back to the play against Florida State, which is probably, in my opinion, was his best throw of the game. Was that to Ruggs or Smith? I don't remember, on the left side. You know which one I'm talking about, right? Late in the game on like a third and short when they went for it.
It was Ruggs. Was the one that he dropped.
Yeah, and that was like a great throw.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, just slightly out in front where only the receiver can make the play on it, where the defensive back has no chance. I think we really are seeing, and we talk about this every week, especially after the first week. Jalen's ability to make the tough throws is improving.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to really feel good about. But you're right, there just isn't much to say about Jalen's performance in this game.
Right. It just wasn't like I said. They just didn't ask him to do a whole lot.
He didn't even run the ball. I mean, he ran the ball a few times, but like they didn't make that like the focal point of the game plan, right? Running him. I don't know, how many design runs do you guys think he had?
They did a draw on that first third and long on the first.
Yeah, it was a giveaway, and they did a design keep earlier on that too, like a little counter. There's just no reason to when the backs were playing the way they were.
5, I would say.
Yeah, and I think Mitch, you brought up the fact that there wasn't a lot of Carter, I think you said that there wasn't a lot of options, and that's true as well. Like maybe like Mitch, you said they ran a couple on the goal line, but there really wasn't a lot. And I think that's sort of a good way to sort of segue into this idea that Alabama got their running game yesterday or Saturday. I keep saying yesterday. Saturday was kind of a throwback, right? To maybe some some of the games, back, I don't know, 2012, 2013, right? Yeah. Where you didn't have the big running threat at quarterback, and you really were just talking about what you were going to be able to get out of your running backs. And man, they played well. Everybody played well.
The backs played amazing, and the offensive line was about as dominant. I mean, all of them, every single person on the offensive line played fantastic. Lester Cotton had easily his best game.
Lester Cotton looked so good.
Yeah.
He looked so good. He had a great block. Bo's first touchdown, when Bro broke it out wide, Cotton was pulling around, had a great block on the edge to spring Bo. He played so well. I was so happy for Lester Cotton.
And, one way it was different than those old Bama teams, than your 2012 Bama teams, was they ran a lot of gap.
Yeah, there was a lot of gaps.
They pulled everybody. They were pinning and pulling. They were pulling Jonah Williams. They were pulling Ross Pierschbaker. Everybody.
Who do you guys think played the best game?
On the offense or on the line?
Offensive line, just offensive line.
Ross Pierschbaker was SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week,
and that kind of matched. I thought for me that really matched with what I saw. I thought he played like a perfect game.
Yeah.
And I thought Jonah was great too.
We said before, technique has never been his problem, certainly.
Right.
And so you kind of expect better games from him against teams like Vanderbilt that aren't going to overwhelm him with talent on the inside. But yeah, he was fantastic. I mean, they were all
yeah.
But
he played with power too, though, didn't you think?
Yeah.
He showed some really good strength and power, and I thought he played really well. I was really happy to see that. They were just blowing him off the line.
Yeah,
There was a stat I saw today about, I don't remember the exact numbers, and I really don't remember the stat itself, but it was about the amount of yards before contact that the Alabama backs are averaging so far this year. And it was like the amount of yards that the backs are averaging before contact this year, just before contact, is equal to the total amount of yards that a lot of teams, or maybe it's the total amount of yards that Alabama is getting before contact is equal to like what 95 teams have for their total yardage.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me terribly.
Yeah, so they're just creating just these huge, like, giant-sized gaps for these backs, and
Well, and they did, in terms of some scheme stuff, they we talked last week about how it'd be great to see him use some two-back stuff.
Yeah.
David never does that, and they did it
on like the 5th play of the game.
Yeah.
Didn't work out too well.
They did, yeah. No, they were. I looked. They had both Bo and Jacobs out there on the play before that. I don't remember what that play was. It was something moderate.
I think it was like Jalen Keat maybe or something. Yeah.
But they had that and that play they were trying to get the ball to Bo on a wheel route.
Right.
But they had some. They had a couple. They lined up Brian Robinson at H-back a couple times.
It was weird to see 24 in there early in the game, and I was like, so that was cool.
And they're doing they split Jacobs out wide a couple times. They got creative.
This is the most. Have we ever seen an Alabama team understatement that played more guys on the offense? And I'm not just talking about playing guys like including garbage time snaps. I'm talking about like just snaps when the result of the game is still undetermined. They play so many guys.
Yeah. I mean, they're going 6 deep at receiver. They were going 3 deep at tight end. We might see them do that again if they feel like obviously they burned the red shirts on both Major Tennyson and Kendrick James.
Right.
If they feel like one of those guys is ready for more time, they might go 3 deep again. They're consistently bringing in, they're doing jumbo sets where they're bringing in Jedrick Wills as an additional tackle. They're consistently going 3 deep at running back, and they had been going 3 deep at running back because Jacobs was hurt. Now they're going to go 4. Now they're going to go 4 deep, and maybe even 5 if they feel like getting some more time for Robinson. So that's
What do you guys think? This is not necessarily related to Vanderbilt necessarily. We can get back there in a second, but what do you guys think about what's going to happen to Najee's playing time going forward? Jacobs was in before him on Saturday. That doesn't necessarily mean that Jacobs is going to be ahead of him on the depth chart, permanently. But it's interesting to think, like, did Najee really get a lot of snaps before Tua came in? Didn't seem like it.
He didn't get it. He got some, but not a ton.
Yeah.
I think it wouldn't be a surprise to see him get less, just as a sheer matter of there are only so many snaps to go around. I do think you'll see them work more of those 2-back sets in because, they have these guys and they're so talented and they want to get them all on the field. But also I think, Najee is, I would say he's sort of the true third string back. And
Jacobs is kind of not really a running back.
Yeah, in the sense that they use him and are going to use him the same way that they use Damian and Bo. Now, they don't use Damian and Bo in quite the same ways. They have different strengths, and I think they do a good job of playing to those strengths in different ways. But, Jacobs is he's going to be one of like a Darren Sproles kind of guy,
Yeah.
In the sense that he's going to get, I think a lot of running backs really need to play series. They need to get fed a little bit. And, maybe you bring them out when they have a long run and need a rest, or maybe run on a series. But Jacobs is sort of like the kind of guy who can have an impact even when he's just rotating in kind of at random and playing as kind of a third down guy and splitting out wide some and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I'm interested to watch going forward how they handle that. Now let's sort of get, so we've talked about some of the backs lower down on the depth chart. Let's sort of talk about the two guys at the top of the depth chart, because I'm pretty excited about what they're going to get from those two. Thinking back to they haven't really had when's the last time they really had a great tandem at running back? Because last year, Bo didn't come on till late in the season, and then by the time Bo came on, Damian was kind of on the downturn as far as I think injuries had started to catch up to him, and he was losing productivity.
Yeah.
And then if you think about the year before that, obviously it was all Derek.
Yeah. And Kenyon, 2014 because
TJ is always hurt
that year. Yeah.
It's
got to be 2012.
Yeah, it's really 2012 when you had just a great tandem of backs. Now, I mean, that was fun watching those two guys play, and the reason why it was so fun to me is because they both seem to be really at the top of their games on Saturday.
Yeah.
And clearly the offensive line helped out a little bit, but they played so well, especially in terms of you see Damian's vision and cutting ability, and then to take that and then Bo's power.
Yeah.
I mean, that was
and Bo, a lot has been made about that, he's a little slimmer now and stuff like that, but it looks like he's gotten faster and his balance is better.
Right.
And that's the big thing, I think, is that his balance is better, but without losing, any little bit of power.
Now, you had made a point that you had made a point, I think, a few minutes ago about how you think that they're playing to each guy's strength. You were referring to Damian and Bo, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Damian is sort of a Mark Ingram type of guy. He's a fantastic zone back, and in the sense that he has really great lateral and short area quickness and really, really great vision. And Bo is kind of a guy who excels as sort of a one cut downhill back, kind of more suited for gap schemes. And so I think, I haven't charted it out to see how many of each type of play they ran with each guy, but it does seem to me like they tend to, and like I said, they didn't do much option this game, but I feel like they tend to use Damian a little more in the option game, and they tend to use him more in basically like inside zone from the shotgun and stuff like that. Whereas they're really using Bo a little more in the under center run game or out of the pistol, and a little more gap schemes with him, stuff where he can really get going downhill.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Mitch, what did you think about just generally about Bo and Damian from Saturday?
Yeah, I was thinking, I think on Damian's kind of long run.
The touchdown?
Yeah, the touchdown. It's like, if Adoree Jackson's not chasing him, I don't know that there's many people that can catch him in a foot race either. I mean, I know we talked about his lateral quickness, which is maybe second best in the country.
To Saquon.
A freak.
Oh my
God. He's not quite Saquon.
I could watch those clips of Saquon Barkley like
that's unbelievable.
Souls for that's football porn right there.
I mean, he's really. I was watching some of that stuff that you guys were posting on Twitter because I didn't see that game, but man, he's good. He's real good.
He's like that one. Everybody made the big deal about that one crazy.
The one against SC.
No.
In this game, okay, yeah.
We had one where he got to the sideline and it looked like he was going to go out and then kind of danced along and then pulled himself back in and got his balance and took off for like 15 more yards. But the money part of that play was, I think this was the one you sent a GIF of, Mitch, that he kind of bursts through in the middle of the field and he makes one cut on a guy and then he has to make another cut on a guy, and the second cut It was like he just like teleported sideways.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Like it looks like a glitch in a video game. Like
Yeah.
it just doesn't look natural.
He's good.
But yeah, so I mean, I think Damien is kind of just right there with those guys. Well, not right there, but right behind them.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that I feel like I kind of identify. I like to identify one or two of these guys with Alabama every year. Is a guy that's not getting as much like NFL hype right now, but that you feel like once people start to watch the tape, they're going to be like, oh,
yeah,
like, this guy. He's just because I think he's a really, he's like I don't think like his top end speed is not elite. I don't think. But it's, you saw it on Saturday when he made that long run, that touchdown. He's plenty fast enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, given that he is essentially elite at basically every, maybe he's not the world's best receiver. They don't tend to use him as much in that role as they use other guys. But basically every other thing in terms of pass protection, in terms of vision, in terms of lateral agility and stuff like basically every other important running back skill, he is elite.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was a play from Bo where I think he had just gotten past the first down. Somebody tried to make a tackle on him. He was like slightly off balance, and basically it was like a linebacker for Vanderbilt had like a free hit on him and he's off balance, and the Vanderbilt linebacker just bounces off of him. And he runs on for like, another 4 or 5 yards. But it's like,
yeah, that was the play. That was early on, right? Maybe on their first touchdown drive.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, he played really well. I don't know. I'm so excited. Like, I don't know if it's possible to get the two of them in the backfield at the same time, but like that could
that's
be.
what I wonder. Like, how do you break these tendencies that we're talking about? I mean, is that one way to do it, where you just
to get them in there together?
And well, I think the fact that Bo is a bigger guy, and they've certainly shown a willingness to use Bo as like a lead blocker for Jalen.
Yeah,
so I think you can if you want to get them both on the field, you can put Bo at H-back, which I think they've done a little bit.
Mitch, do you mean specifically like because you were talking, Carter was talking about how they're using them sort of schematically? Were you sort of talking about how you break those?
Yeah. So how the defense doesn't see Bo coming out there and know it's going to be some sort of zone play, and
I think
it's one way to counter that to just have them both out there, and
maybe. But I also think that like sort of maybe that's like what Carter described as maybe the general approach that they take with these backs. But I don't think it's a hard and fast thing. Like I don't think like it's like they can only do these things. I think Bo and Damien are both able to sort of be effective runners in any scheme.
Yeah.
So I don't think, if there are teams, if they play teams and that team goes out and they see Bo and they start guessing, okay, if they run the ball, this is going to be gap scheme. I think they could be very quickly exposed, because I don't think that that's a gamble that you can take, because it's not like maybe they would prefer to do that. Mm-hmm. But if Alabama can see you start trying to cheating up on defense and doing things that makes it look like you're trying to counteract gap schemes only, they're going to hit you with some other stuff that's going to be a real problem for you. It would be a problem if these backs could only operate in one specific type of scheme. But I don't think that's true. I think they might be better in one scheme. So who do you say?
Fournette.
Wow. Yeah. Well, but I think I don't. That is not really something I'm concerned about. Yeah. Just because I don't think that these guys are limited in that way. Yeah. The receivers, you guys, do we have really anything to say about the receivers? I don't know.
Not really, I don't think. And, it was the same story for them as it was for Jalen, I think. There just wasn't a whole lot for them to do.
Calvin dropped that one ball, but he played well otherwise. Alabama got the ball in the reverse, which is kind of interesting. I think that was the first time for something like that this year. Yeah. They really, speaking of reverse, and I think that Saban was asked about this on Monday. They've kind of gotten away from some of the more Lane Kiffin installs you know, the real sort of horizontal stuff that they were running a lot with Kiffin, which is interesting. Not that they're not doing any screens, but they're certainly not doing they're not doing a ton of jet motion. It seems like they're almost doing jet motion exclusively as a means of distracting linebackers and ultimately just running the ball up the middle. Right. And they're not really, so the jet sweeps are sort of seem to be kind of pushed out, and the screen game is not as fundamental to the offense as it was previously, even if it's still there.
Well, and the screens they've thrown have been as much or more to backs. Like they've thrown a drastically smaller percentage of wide receiver screens this year,
which is way more NFL style.
Yeah.
In terms of your screen game being back centric rather than receiver centric, and that's probably not a surprise that you bring in an NFL guy and that's what you're going to get. There are some screens that they haven't really seemed to work well. Their most successful wide receiver screen, was probably the one that bounced off Calvin's hands and went right into Cam Simms's. So that was really
Devontae Smith, I think, that they targeted on that one.
Oh, okay. Yes, you're right. Devontae Smith. Probably the biggest thing to talk about the receivers is not necessarily how the guys like Calvin and Robert Foster performed with Jalen in, but probably more, you know where I'm going with this, probably more interesting to talk about how some of the receivers, namely Jerry Jeudy and Devontae Smith, performed with the backup quarterback.
Yeah. Emphasis on backup quarterback. Let's get that out there. Emphasis on backup quarterback. But holy hell, he was good Saturday.
Yeah. I was thinking back. I just want to say I was thinking back to I'm thinking back to times when Blake Smith would come in for AJ when Blake was AJ's backup in 2012 and 2013, and there was just no offense. It was just run the ball. Yeah. This is not a shot at Blake, and Blake turned out to be a really good quarterback for Alabama, but just when he was the backup there, they would come in and there would really be no semblance of offense. It was just run the ball.
Anyone was a backup. I can not remember one time at Alabama under Nick Saban when they brought in a backup and they were really running an offense. And he's the first backup under Saban that I feel like they've really let throw the ball. And now part of that is because he's the backup and he's also a true freshman, and they need to get him game ready because
to develop him.
One injury and he's the starter.
Right.
But I think also a part of it is they want to let him out there and get him through because he's really, really good.
Yeah. Now I want to say so now playing against the Vanderbilt backups, and that's gonna help.
And when you're up 38-0 when he comes in, although they had their starters in for a while, that clip that Cole Kubelik put up that everyone was retweeting, where the backup it was I think it was Kennedy and J.C. Hassenauer. Just absolutely annihilating the Vanderbilt nose guards. That was Nephi Lealau. That was the same. That was the guy who was talking smack. Talking smack, but so the Vanderbilt started a while. But
I think that. So I think, So say, but my point was going to be, I don't really care what defense he's going against. He played well just in terms of the fact that he threw good ball after good ball. He consistently got the ball out on time. He showed a lot of particularly on one play, obviously he showed some mobility and elusiveness in the pocket, but just generally he's very mobile, and he keeps his eyes downfield, and he seems to want to make plays down the field rather than just sort of give up on it, tuck it and run. He threw some great balls.
And he's got a quick release too, which that's doesn't matter what defense you're playing against. You can see how quick somebody can release it.
I don't really know what to say about Tua, other than that he just played really well. Yeah.
There was one. I can't remember. This might have been the touchdown because the Tua football play was that was the touchdown to Devontae Smith.
Devontae Smith, but he hit Jeudy on a crosser.
Yeah. It was either the touchdown to Judy or just another throw that he had that kind of got them down toward the red zone. But he threw one ball that was just a frozen rope.
That's the thing. He has so much zip on his balls.
Yeah.
It's like there. It's like out of his hand and it's there. I mean, he really drives the ball hard down the field with the way he throws it. Like that's really impressive. I don't know the last time that Alabama had a quarterback that threw the ball like that. I think we were all hoping that Blake Barnett was going to be.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Because AJ didn't throw the ball like that.
No, AJ's got a perfectly fine arm, but not that.
Right. So I think, I mean, that these balls are thrown with such really sort of impressive ball velocity, and I mean, you can see how talented he is just on the way he throws the football and the way the ball comes out of his hand. So let me ask two questions about Tua. The first question is there a way to play him? Is there a way to take advantage of his ability this year that isn't just garbage time? Are we in favor of doing anything like that?
At this point, the thing is, it has to be a planned thing.
Right. That's the thing. It's not just play it by the seat of your pants, throw the other quarterback in when you want to. We're talking about like specific packages.
It's got to be on the third drive. We're bringing Tua in, and we're going to have him run some plays and stuff like that. It absolutely. I will not like the number one thing I am against is being Steve Spurrier and Jalen throws an interception and you get out the cane and theatrically yank him off stage.
Right.
No, absolutely not. But particularly where if you got games where you maybe aren't sure you can run the ball that well, and you want to get out there and loosen up the box a little bit, and you feel like maybe you've got some mismatches down the field, he just throws a heck of a ball.
That's my question, though. Like, okay, let's take a two quarterback system that we can think of. Let's take Chris Leak and Tim Tebow. Just first one I thought of. Leak was the guy that ran the offense generally, and then you brought in Tebow, and the purpose, bringing in Tebow had a very specific purpose, right? You were going to run a very specific type of sort of power running offense when you brought Tebow into the game.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, this is 11 years ago or whatever. So I think that was really how they used Tebow. I imagine that's how they had to use Tebow.
There's a lot of goal line packages. They would bring him in.
Right.
Urban Meyer had already had undefeated or near undefeated teams at Bowling Green and Utah using his system. Chris Leak was not that guy, so they would run kind of a more, a less, Urban Meyer spread option offense.
Right.
And then they would bring in Tebow kind of on the goal line, short yardage to run, quarterback draws and some spread option stuff.
Yeah. So, but my point, I guess, is that there was a very specific purpose there was very specific purpose in terms of what they were trying to do with the package that involved the backup quarterback. It wasn't just, here comes the backup quarterback for a different look.
Yeah. Right.
So go ahead. Sorry.
These two don't lend themselves as easily to that.
Exactly.
Like, if it were the other way around, so if Tua's the starter and Jalen's the backup, it would be much easier because then you could bring in Jalen and have him run spread option plays. And that would be a much more defined thing. That would be a much more Chris Leak Tebow type thing. But when it's your backup that's the better passer, it's it's hard to see what exactly that's going to be.
And that's my feeling. That's really my feeling on it too.
Yeah.
Because so with that out of the way, would you guys be okay with doing a sort of two quarterback thing if there wasn't that sort of really defined purpose for bringing Tua in?
I would.
You would?
Yeah.
What? Sell me on it, because okay. I'm not.
Okay. So I think back to, there was two games last year where if they had employed a two quarterback system throughout the year, they could have taken advantage of it. So LSU, when they were struggling to do they couldn't throw the ball.
Okay, because they had no they had no ability to get. Okay.
So up to that LSU game, they had kind of employed a 2-quarterback system with Blake and Jalen. Then maybe you start leaning a little more heavily on Blake during that game to kind of loosen him up. And I mean, it's just a setup when you need to. So, yeah, throw in a few packages every game for Tua to come in.
Did you have another game? Did you have another game in mind?
Clemson.
Okay.
Clemson towards the end of the game.
So is the thinking more that just like you're going to bring Tua into a game when Jalen's just not really getting it done? Like is that because you picked the 2 games in which the game was close late, and one of the big problems was that the Alabama offense wasn't really moving the ball consistently. So is it as simple as is it as simple as just I would use the backup quarterback in these games because the offense isn't playing well, and I think they could benefit from
what I'm saying is maybe the games aren't even close late if those guys are playing.
But how much are they playing though? Oh, let me put it another way to you. Let's say that you're in that LSU game last year, okay? No, you know what? Let's make it more interesting. Let's say you're in the Clemson game last year, and let's say you've got Tua, okay? And Tua throughout last year is sort of doing the things that he's done this year, but it's in limited time, right? He's getting garbage time. He's getting some scattered packages throughout all the games, okay? But obviously Jalen has taken the vast majority of the snaps all year. Now you go into that national championship game. Give me sort of just like a brief overview of how you're going to use the quarterbacks in that game. Now remember Alabama was playing Alabama when in the first half, Bo was running the ball pretty well, and they were moving the ball. Jalen wasn't playing great, but they were moving the ball. Is there any point in the first half where you bring him in?
Well, I mean, I might bring him in and just do exactly what you did with Jalen and run the ball. I mean, I don't know that you're calling plays any differently.
Okay.
Just because he's in there.
But basically what you're saying though is that late in the game when Alabama's going 3 and out, they had like God, how many straight 3 and outs in that second half, like 11 or something crazy.
More.
You're just gonna bring in Tua at some point and just give him the offense?
I mean, just if you've developed like to that point, it would have been what? That was their 16th game, 17th game?
15th.
15th? Yeah, 15th game. So, I mean, he would have played, a fair number of snaps in every game up to that point.
Okay.
I mean, so I think he's pretty comfortable. And, they prepare for it each week. I mean, I think you're not just throwing him in there just because things aren't going well. I mean, maybe you just lean on him more like you lean on a running back more when you've got the hot hand.
And you think that you can do that with the quarterbacks?
I do, but there's not really precedent for it, I guess. So,
what do you think, Carter?
I
mean, it is. It's sort of like so trust me. Like I understand the temptation, to just like thinking back. The national championship game is a great example. Thinking back to the fact that like if they just could have gotten like one good drive there, they probably win the game. Even if they just could have gotten a couple first downs on some of those drives,
a completion, you get 3 more plays.
Right. So I understand the thinking behind it. I'm curious, Carter, how you feel about that.
I think it depends if it's just like if he hasn't gotten snaps at any point the rest of the year with the game still in doubt. Then I don't know if I.
Mitch wants him to get snaps throughout games. You want him to get random drives throughout games when the games are still in doubt, in order to prepare him for that moment when he needs to take over the offense because Jalen's not getting it done.
Yeah, if he's gotten, like I wouldn't be in favor of it normally, but if he's gotten, just random drives where they've said, okay, every third drive we're going to bring him in. And then you get in that situation in the national championship game, and it's just like, this is the season right here. We got to have one drive. Then, yeah.
Would you have done that? Would you have pulled Jalen in that game?
But it's not pulling them, right? Because you've planned for
That's
this.
true. You're looking at this.
Like I'm saying that they planned for this in every game. Like,
but if Tua comes in and he puts together a good drive, you got to keep him in at that point, right? Because the guy came in and put together a good drive. Jalen didn't put together any good drive, so he's got to stay in.
I mean,
so in that sense, you are. I understand what you're saying. That technically you don't want to think of it as pulling him because it's something you've done all year.
Yeah.
But in that game, if the offense is moving well in the national championship, you're probably not going to play around with switching the quarterbacks up, right?
Well, but it's not switching it up any differently than you've done for 13 games previous. I mean,
you really want like sort of a running back rotation.
Yeah.
And then that gives you the sort of the freedom and the flexibility to ride the hot hand if one quarterback is playing better than the other quarterback, in the same way you would if one running back is playing better, if either Bo or Damien is playing much better than the other one in any given game. It's exactly. That's gutsy. It's very gutsy.
I will say that if you're gonna do it with these two, I think that's probably how you have to, because it's like we were saying, when it's your backup that's the better passer, how do you have like a defined package?
Right. Let's think very short term now. Would you start doing that with Tua coming up in order to prepare for the possibility that you might need to do it later if Jalen's not getting it done in a certain game? Because you got to start doing it now. Yeah. Right. I mean, that's Mitch. Your whole theory revolves around the fact that this is something that they've been doing throughout the year. So are you saying, do you want to see them come out against Ole Miss and third series of the game in comes Tua?
I mean,
no matter what Jalen did on the first two drives.
I mean, for this strategy to work, I think that's what they would have to do.
I would agree that you have to commit to it and do it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm not sold. Not necessarily because Not necessarily because I don't think that what you're saying could possibly work, or that I have any sort of rebuttal to your specific argument, but just the idea of playing two quarterbacks just scares me. It always has. It's hard for me to just get past.
There's a whole lot more examples of it not working.
There's just no precedent for it. But I say that for this specific scenario, because how many tough games are they going to have this regular season? I mean, how many?
Well, that's a good point too. But if you do that, if you do that, do you risk stunting Jalen's development by taking him out sporadically, not allowing him to get into the rhythm of games?
I mean, if it's not working, then just stop doing. I mean, if it looks like it is stunting, if he's getting out of rhythm and stunting it, just stop doing. I mean, I feel like that's why you're trying it out now.
Right. Right. But you could argue though that these games coming up are super important for Jalen in order to get as many snaps as possible to continue his development in these games that they really can't lose, for what will ultimately be the games later in the season that are going to decide sort of how the ultimate outcome of the season, right? And I think you could make the argument that you would be best served not taking any snaps away from Jalen.
Yeah, Jalen's not really a guy I worry about too much. I will say mentally. I mean, I don't think.
Well, that I agree with. I think he's as strong mentally as anybody.
And the good news is that obviously this might change if Tua were getting snaps in anything other than garbage time. But every time Tua's out there, makes a great play or throws a touchdown pass or something like that, they always cut to Jalen's like the first guy to congratulate him. So they seem to have a good.
Very good relationship
with each other, which is really nice to see, because it would be easy, even if there were, even if they weren't like having any considerations of bringing in Tua outside of garbage time. I think it would be easy for them, with all the fan hype about Tua, and with Tua being quite clearly the better passer of the two. I think it would be easy for either or both of them to resent each other.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think, that's such a credit to Jalen, right? That he's not, that's not going to happen for him. And you have confidence that that's not going to happen for him.
Yeah.
And I remember even last year, like in the USC game, Blake came back in late and threw a touchdown to OJ Howard or something. And Jalen was on the sideline celebrating, if I remember correctly. And so, this is just who he is. He's such the ultimate team first guy.
Right.
I guess we're probably got to move on from Vandy. I wanted to say one thing because I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about this. The attitude of the team going into the game is interesting to me.
Yeah.
Alabama has made a habit of taking these sort of like perceived slights that are not very
they do it better than just about anybody else.
That are not very significant. I think back to like 2013 Tennessee. Bush Jones maybe called Alabama the red team or something.
Yeah.
And Alabama made like a super big deal about that. They are very good at taking these objectively meaningless throwaway comments that are not really all that disrespectful.
Right.
And using them to like, and I'm sure a lot of that comes from the coaches too, who probably like have to beat this stuff into their heads and be like, this team, they don't have any respect for you. They think you're gonna walk in there to their house and they're gonna roll all over you. And I mean, I don't think that they had any thoughts.
So many athletes fuel themselves like entirely on disrespect.
Right.
And when everybody thinks you're great, I guess you kind of have to manufacture disrespect.
Yeah. But you could see it in that game. Like they played so physically. I think back to the first touchdown. Bo scores that first touchdown. He's already in the end zone. And with his right arm, he's like 2 strides into the end zone already. And with his right arm, he throws a Vanderbilt defender who was running side by side. He like pushes him away from him. Like he's already in the end zone. And the guy's not even really trying to do anything. And Bo sticks out his arm and throws him away. And that was like, I thought that was very sort of like symbolic of the way that they approached that game. They were going to be as physically dominating as they possibly could be the whole game.
Yeah.
And if we want to use this as a transition to Ole Miss, Saban's already spinning some comments.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
He's Saban on Ole. This is a quote. This is a tweet from Alex Byington. I don't know what it is, but Saban on Ole Miss believing it had Alabama's number. Quote, I think the ultimate disrespect is when someone quietly thinks they have your number.
yeah, I saw that.
So
that's pretty good. I like that.
This whole week, the coaches are being like, they beat us 2 years in a row, and we had to come back and needed some defensive touchdowns to beat them last year. They think they don't respect you. They don't think you're good. They think they're gonna beat you. They think they figured you out.
You can just hear it. Yeah, I mean, I can just hear it all week now. And that stuff is probably necessary, right? Like in these SEC games where Alabama is the much better team, they probably need to find something.
Oh yeah.
These are not professional athletes, right? These are still kids, right? And these let-ups can really happen. And you probably the coaches know that they can't do that in the paycheck games because the kids just aren't going to take it seriously.
Yeah.
But they can do it in the SEC games probably no matter who the team is because it's ultimately still a conference game and the kids at least will sort of respect it and they won't just sort of laugh it off like they would if you were trying to do that for Tennessee Chattanooga or something. So Ole Miss, we probably have to wrap this up pretty quickly considering we spent a whole lot of time talking about Vanderbilt and related issues, but I think that we talked about the Ole Miss offense a little bit earlier. It could be challenging for Alabama, I think.
Yeah, I think they're going to score some points. I think they're gonna sling it around, and like we said, it's when you've got great players, and really the most important players in a scheme like this are the quarterback and the receivers.
Right.
When you've got great players at those positions, they're just going to make plays sometimes. And so I think you're going to see Ole Miss string a couple drives together. Now, not having their starting center hurts Alabama, and if they don't have AJ Brown, that helps too.
They need AJ Brown.
Yeah, but Shea Patterson can really sling it, and especially if at first they're not getting as much pressure on him, they're going to make some plays down the field. But I think this is going to be – I think the game plan for Alabama on offense is going to be pretty similar. Ole Miss's run defense is not good.
Right.
It's not like they're giving up like 180 yards a game, and they have not faced an actually good rushing attack before. So I kind of think if Alabama, if the offensive line just, forget the backs, the offensive line plays anywhere close to as good as it did against Vanderbilt, I think they're really going to kind of control the tempo of the game. And, it maybe Ole Miss gets a drive here and there, but
it's going to be so hard for Ole Miss to block up plays well enough to sustain drives. I think what's clear is that when Ole Miss is going to be extremely reliant on explosive plays in this game.
Yep.
In order to move the ball, and I think that there was some thoughts that we had earlier in the year that this has always been the case against an Alabama defense, that the way to beat them is with explosive plays. We've talked about this for two years on this podcast, that if you want to beat Alabama, you need explosive plays. There was big games that we thought that the other team had no chance, largely because we didn't think they could hit explosive plays. I think back to the Michigan State Cotton Bowl game. We didn't think that Michigan State really had a chance in that game because they couldn't hit explosive plays. And you can do a lot of things well offensively, but against previous Alabama teams, if you couldn't hit explosive plays, you had no chance. Now, in this game, or this year, we thought that they were maybe that wasn't quite as true anymore. I think that we all believe that good offenses would have more opportunities this year to sustain drives against Alabama and be less reliant on explosive plays than was the case in previous years. But if that is the case, this game is not an example of that, I don't think.
Right. No. Yeah.
So what you're going to see, I think, is you're going to have to see Ole Miss come out there, and they're going to have to take a lot of shots to Brown, to Metcalf, to the other receivers. They're just going to have to throw the ball up to them and let them make plays. And it's the only way that they're going to be like. Let me put it this way: how many points does Ole Miss have to? Ole Miss is not going to win this game, but how many points does Ole Miss have to score to give themselves a chance to win the game?
35.
That was going to be
at
my
least
exact number. Yeah.
It's going to have to be the kind of game it was 2 years ago. It's gonna have to be the kind of game it was last year. Like this is not going to be 23-17. Like
right.
This Ole Miss defense just isn't good enough.
Right.
For them to win a low scoring game, they're gonna have to make it into a shootout.
Yeah, and then the thing about it too is that in a best case scenario where Ole Miss hits a bunch of explosive plays and gets points that way, that's going to put their defense on the field for a lot of this game, a defense that is not that good and a defense that is going to have to deal with Alabama's running attack, and those guys are just going to be totally worn out in the second half. So, if Ole Miss does, if Ole Miss scores 35, 38 points, I still would put the odds of Alabama winning extremely high, just because I think that would lend itself to Alabama completely controlling the second half.
Right. Yeah. I see, what I expect is that Alabama is going to come out and basically look a lot on offense like they did against Vanderbilt.
I agree.
Ole Miss they're going to run the ball really well, and Ole Miss is just going to have no way of stopping them, really. And Ole Miss might stay in it for a bit, just, from Patterson kind of making plays down the field, but eventually he's going to have to press, and he's going to make some bad decisions, maybe throw a pick or two. And from there, it's just going to snowball, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We had one other question, right? From from McGee, the referee, about the pass rush being better. We covered the pass rush a lot earlier. Yeah. I would say I think maybe Mitch made this point earlier. The pass rush was better in this game because they wanted to be better.
Yeah.
Right? Because they made efforts similarly to how they did in the first game against Florida State. They made efforts to actually be successful rushing the passer that they didn't necessarily have.
Yeah. They tried more.
Yes. That's the biggest thing. They tried more, which is just before we get back to the specifics of the question, which goes back to a larger point that we've made ad nauseum at this point, which is that what happens in the paycheck games are not instructive in any way of what is going to happen in future games.
Right.
Because they're not doing the same things in those paycheck games that they are going to do in previous games. So the typical answer to why did X improve from the paycheck game to a different game is because they started to try to do X.
Yeah, and they so it's that it's they got Anthony Jennings and Rashaan Evans back.
That's that's certainly part of it as well.
And also, guys just played better.
Yeah.
So I think that's your basically your 3 key points there.
Yeah.
And with the Ole Miss offensive line being kind of a patchwork, I mean, I don't want to say patchwork because I think it's guys that have played a bunch, but they're in different positions and everything.
Yeah, guys have moved around. The center's probably going to be out. They weren't that great last year, even when they had getting guys back only helps so much if they weren't good in the first place.
Not only that was the point I was going to make. Not only last year, but really in these really good Ole Miss years, the offensive line has not really been a strength.
No.
That's not to say they haven't had some good players. Obviously, they had Tunsil for a few years, and he was a very good player. But
Little left tackle now is very good.
Say that again.
Greg Little, who's the left tackle now, is very good.
Yeah, but just generally, their offensive lines have kind of been underwhelming. I thought they had a lot of success offensively in the past, almost in spite of the offensive line. The team that beat Alabama in 2014 in Oxford, that offensive line really was not good. Yep. Like the Alabama defensive line completely controlled that football game despite losing. Mm-hmm. Maybe the one the next year, the 2015, which was probably the best Ole Miss team under Hugh Freeze. Yeah. That offensive line was a little bit better. I would say they were like probably an average unit by SEC standards. The other teams, the year before, the year after, certainly this year, are definitely below average units. So it's not something that's ever been all that good for them. So it's hard to see them do enough stuff offensively, and I don't know. It's the fact that the center's out. I mean, you would think that guys like Duran and Raekwon Davis can have great games. That's what I would expect.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, chance of home game, first SEC game at home, so that's exciting.
Yeah.
Hopefully Alabama plays.
Another late kickoff like the 2015 game, and it's probably it's scheduled for 8:00 Central, but it's on ESPN and they have Auburn, Mississippi State scheduled for 5 p.m. So probably going to start closer to 8:30. So expect to be watching Bama till midnight.
Yeah, it'll be a late night. Hopefully Alabama plays well, makes us forget about some other news and some other sports.
We want to do predictions and then wrap up.
Yeah.
This is one of those ones where I'm glad I'm not betting against the spread.
What's the line? 29 is the line.
28.5. Yeah,
28.5.
Yeah,
that's a good spread. That's
one of those where you look at it and you think you're like, damn, Vegas is good.
Yeah, you think I'm not going to bet on this game. You think I'm glad I have the option to not have to bet on this game.
I think Ole Miss does get some points on the board, but like I said, it leans on them on offense throughout the whole way, and then the dam breaks eventually on both sides of the ball. So 42-14.
That is exactly my prediction. So I'm not even going to say anything else.
I was just going to say like 42-7. So
yeah,
I think we probably all see this game playing out pretty similarly. I think it'll be good. Just I think people just have to go in with the right expectations, which is that in the passing game they are going to make plays, and it does not mean that the Alabama secondary sucks.
Right. Yeah.
Just to sort of get that out of the way. But anyway.
Okay. Well, that's it for this week. We'll see y'all next week for Texas A&M.
Yeah, Texas A&M. So that'll be a fun game. That'll be a fun. I mean, Texas A&M kind of sucks, but it'll be a fun road game. Interesting game to talk about. So yeah.
All right. So I'll see y'all next week, and roll Tide.
Roll Tide.